Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Dr. Hafiza Sania, and today we will be uh, doing the acquired heart disease. Hope you all are fine and doing good. Let's start the topic, acquired heart disease, and in this topic we will be covering inshallah two topics, that is the rheumatic fever and the other one is the Kawasaki disease. So let's begin with the rheumatic fever first. Okay, rheumatic fever. This is the acute post-infectious inflammatory disorder which primarily affect the joints, heart, brain, and the skin. This is basically a non-suppurative sequelae of group A streptococcal infection. This is the basic definition of the rheumatic fever, that this is an acute, a post-infectious and inflammatory disorder. Now, rheumatic fever, basically it occurs after a preceding group A streptococcal infection. You may get a history of sore throat or fever and 2 to 3 weeks before the patient present to you with the rheumatic fever. So there is an interval for the serological response to occur, and on the laboratory parameters, you can evidence it by the elevation of the anti-streptolysin O titers. Now, what causes the rheumatic fever? The exact cause of rheumatic fever is still not known, but the proposed theories behind the occurrence of rheumatic fever is basically the cross reactivity between the streptococcal antigens, which include the M proteins, the cell wall group, uh, carbohydrates, and the capsular hyaluronate, and they are react with the host antigens, that is the antigens present on the human cells of heart, joints, and the brain. So this cross reactivity is basic cause of the rheumatic fever. That is why we are getting the interval of 2 to 3 weeks before the occurrence of rheumatic fever after the preceding streptococcal infection, because this take time. This cross reactivity takes time. So you get an interval of 2 to 3 weeks before the occurrence of the actual rheumatic fever. Now, not all serotypes of the streptococcus are rheumatogenic. The serotypes that are involved with the rheumatic fever or are most likely to cause rheumatic fever include the serotype M1, M3, M5, M18, and M24. Now, few lines about the epidemiology of the rheumatic fever. Basically, rheumatic fever is more prevalent in the developing part of the world. In the developing countries, the incidence is like 50 cases per 100,000 population per year, and it accounts for about 50% of the all cardiac diseases. The patients who are admitting to the hospital, the patients who are coming to the OPD, about half of those who are coming for the cardiac illness, they are suffering from the rheumatic fever or the consequences of rheumatic fever. While in the developed countries, the incidence is very low, and since the 20th century, the incidence keeps on declining. The usual age of presentation of rheumatic fever, it is the disease of childhood. So the usual age of presentation is between 5 to 15 years. Now, how do the rheumatic fever presents? There are basically certain criteria which has been proposed by the Duckett Jones in 1944. And in this criteria, there are certain major manifestations and there are certain minor manifestations. 5 major manifestations and 4 minor manifestations are there to diagnose a case of rheumatic fever. The major manifestations basically include the carditis, polyarthritis, chorea, erythema marginatum, and the subcutaneous nodules. These are the 5 major manifestations of rheumatic fever. We will do each of these manifestations one by one in the later slides, but you have to memorize this Jones criteria by heart so that you can easily diagnose a patient with rheumatic fever, because the early diagnosis and prompt treatment of rheumatic fever may result in the prevention of rheumatic heart disease later in life. So you have to know what are the major manifestations of the rheumatic fever: carditis, arthritis, chorea, erythema marginatum, and the subcutaneous nodules. These are the 5 major manifestations. While the minor manifestations we have the clinical criteria and we have the laboratory criteria. The clinical criteria are only two, and it involves the fever and the arthralgia. We all know that arthritis is basically the inflammation of the joints. When you look at the joints, that the joint has all the signs of inflammation. They are red, they are hot, they are tender, and there are the limitation of the movement. While in arthralgia, you do not get the physical signs, but the patient may complain of pain in the joints. So arthralgia, which is classically polyarthralgia, is a minor manifestation, while arthritis is the major manifestation of the rheumatic fever. The other clinical finding is the presence of the fever. High grade fever is very characteristic of rheumatic fever, so this is included in the minor manifestations. So two clinical findings are the arthralgia and the fever, while the laboratory findings include the elevation of the acute phase reactants. We all know that the acute phase reactants that we usually order in our labs include the erythrocyte sedimentation rate, that is commonly known as ESR, and the other one is C-reactive protein. So there is elevation of the acute phase reactants, which is the first minor criteria in the laboratory findings, and the second is the presence of prolonged PR interval. The normal PR interval, which is about 3 to 5 small squares, if it is more than 5 small squares, then this is known as the prolonged PR interval, and this is also a minor manifestation of rheumatic fever. So in every patient you are suspecting rheumatic fever, you have to order an ECG so that you can have a look at the PR interval. Along with the major and minor manifestations, you have to have a preceding evidence, supporting evidence of the preceding and group A streptococcal infection, which is evident by either a positive throat culture or a rapid streptococcal antigen test. You can order a rapid streptococcal antigen test. Usually we order the anti-streptolysin O titers that are rapidly available within few hours, or you can send a throat culture and wait for the results of the culture. Or if the first antibody titer is not significantly increased, then we can go for the serial antibody titers. And if they are keeps on increasing and we have strong suspicion of rheumatic fever on clinical grounds, then it is also considered as the supporting evidence of antecedent group A streptococcal infection. This is mandatory. Along with major manifestations or the minor manifestations, the supportive evidence of the group A infection is mandatory to make the diagnosis of rheumatic fever. Except for the three exceptions. We are not going into the details of the exceptions. For your level, you must be knowing that there should be an evidence of the group A streptococcal infection on the labs. Now, how to diagnose rheumatic fever on the basis of this major and minor manifestations? How many major and how many minor manifestations do you require? Let's see. Basically, for the diagnosis, you require two major manifestations. Either if the child is presenting with these manifestations, then there must be two major manifestations. Suppose if the patient is presenting with carditis, then he must have a polyarthritis or chorea or erythema marginatum or subcutaneous nodule to make the diagnosis of rheumatic fever. Or if there is only one major manifestation, like polyarthritis is there, then at least two minor manifestations should be there to make a diagnosis of rheumatic fever. As you can see here, presence of two major manifestations or one major and two minor manifestations plus the evidence of the recent gas infection. This is required for the diagnosis of acute rheumatic fever. You should be strongly adhere to the Jones criteria to make a diagnosis of rheumatic fever so that you do not undertreat or overtreat the patient of rheumatic fever. Okay. Now we will go through the major criteria one by one. First of all, the most common presentation of rheumatic fever is basically the arthritis. Classically, the arthritis of rheumatic fever is a polyarthritis. It's in most of the cases, the arthritis is migratory, occurring in one joint, then the joint normalize, and then it occurs in the second joint, then the second joint normalize, it occurs in the third joint. So this is classically a migratory polyarthritis which is affecting the larger joints. The larger joints include the joints of the knee, ankle, wrist, and the elbow. These are the most common site for the rheumatic arthritis. Now, when you look at those joints, how do they look on clinical examination? The rheumatic joints, they have a characteristic signs that they are exquisitely tender, they are red, they are hot, and there is limitation of the movements. This is the classic presentation of the rheumatic joints. The patient, they are so much tender that the patient will not allow you to touch those particular joints. So this is the classical presentation of the rheumatic arthritis, and they have got a dramatic response to salicylates. So unless you make a diagnosis of rheumatic fever, you do not give salicylate to any patient who is presenting with the arthritis, because it may mask the later progression of the rheumatic fever because of the dramatic response. So if a child presents to you with arthritis, the arthritis may be there because of many other reasons. It may be because of the rheumatoid arthritis. It may be because of some other infection like brucellosis or any other SLE. There are multiple differential diagnoses of arthritis, but rheumatic fever is one of those. So unless you make a diagnosis of rheumatic arthritis, you never prescribe salicylate to a child who is presenting with arthritis, because it may mask the further progression of the illness और आपको जोन्स क्राइटेरिया फुलफिल करने में फिर डिफिकल्टी होता है, बिकॉज आप सिंगल जॉइंट के साथ बच्चा आ गया एंड यू हैव प्रिस्क्राइब सेलिसाइलेट, तो अब माइग्रेटरी नेचर ऑफ द पॉलीआर्थराइटिस विल बी मास्क बिकॉज आपने ट्रीट कर दिया उसको. So for that period of time, unless you make a diagnosis of rheumatic fever, for that period, if you want to give anti painkiller to a child, then in that case you prescribe a safer painkiller or analgesic like acetaminophen, not the salicylates. When you aspirate the synovial fluid from the rheumatic joint, there is elevation of the WBCs. They are like 10,000 to 100,000 per cubic ml. Proteins are also elevated like 4 grams per deciliter, and glucose is normal. This is the presentation of the synovial fluid, things that you get in the synovial fluid in patients with rheumatic fever. This is about the polyarthritis, which was the most frequent occurrence in patients with rheumatic fever, occurs in about 3-4% of the cases, so it was on the top. The next most common manifestation of rheumatic fever is carditis. Carditis, as the name implies, basically inflammation of the heart. It occurs in about almost more than half of the cases of the rheumatic fever. Acute rheumatic fever में carditis is the most important thing to consider, because carditis के sequelae जो हैं वो ज़्यादा important हैं. So you have to look for the carditis in every patient with acute rheumatic fever. The carditis of rheumatic fever is basically a pancarditis. It can involve all 3 layers of the heart, that is endocardium, myocardium, and pericardium. But the involvement of the endocardium is universal. You cannot get myocarditis or pericarditis isolated in patients with rheumatic fever. They may be there along with endocarditis, but never without endocarditis. So endocarditis is basically the universal finding. And endocarditis means involvement of the endocardium, and involvement of the endocardium means there is involvement of the heart valves. Okay. Now let's see how this pancarditis presents. This endocarditis, which is the universal finding in the rheumatic fever, it results in valvulitis. And when there is involvement of the valves because of the inflammation, the first thing that happens to the valve is the presence of the valvular insufficiency or regurgitation. This is the first finding or the initial finding in patients with rheumatic fever. So valvulitis is there, and this results in involvement of the mitral valve. The first valve to be involved in patients with rheumatic fever is your mitral valve. If there are other valves are involved, then they are involved along with the mitral valve. Not almost always there is involvement of the mitral valve. Aortic valve is never involved isolated. If it is involved, it is involved with the mitral, and then the aortic valve gets involved. Likewise, the tricuspid and the pulmonary valves, if they are going to involve, which is a least likely etiology, but if they are going to involve, they are involved along with the mitral valve, never isolated. This you have to keep in your mind. The mitral valve involvement is also the first valve to involvement, and it is almost always involved in your carditis of the rheumatic fever. So we have discussed that valvular insufficiency is the first finding that you see clinically. And how do you identify valvular insufficiency on clinical examination? By the presence of a murmur. The murmur of valvular insufficiency, if suppose mitral valve is involved, then the murmur you will be getting in case of mitral insufficiency or regurgitation is basically a holosystolic murmur or a pansystolic murmur, which is more pronounced at the apex, and it radiates to the axilla. This is the classical murmur of mitral regurgitation. The holosystolic murmur present at the apex, radiating to the axilla. Then later on, years after the initial presentation of rheumatic fever, years after the development of mitral regurgitation, valvular stenosis may develop later on. It usually takes around 10 years to develop valvular stenosis in rheumatic joints, rheumatic valves. So VS, that is valvular stenosis, is seen rarely in children because अगर किसी बच्चे ने 5 years पे या 10 years पे acquire किया है rheumatic fever, तो it will take 10 more years to develop stenosis. Initially regurgitation तो आ जाती है, but stenosis will take 10 or more years to develop, so it is rarely seen in pediatric population. Now, how do the rheumatic carditis presents? हमने बात तो कर ली कि कार्डाइटिस इज अ मेजर मैनिफेस्टेशन, बट जब आप क्लिनिकल एग्जामिनेशन कर रहे हो, बच्चा आपको क्या बताएगा, क्लिनिकल साइंस क्या होंगे इन पेशेंट्स विद rheumatic carditis? So the consistent finding in rheumatic carditis, आपको टेकिकार्डिया, आउट ऑफ प्रोपोर्शन टेकिकार्डिया, फीवर लाइक 101 का है बट पेशेंट का टेकिकार्डिया इज लाइक 130 140. सो आउट ऑफ प्रोपोर्शन टेकिकार्डिया आपको मिलता है इन पेशेंट्स विद rheumatic carditis. उसके अलावा साइंस ऑफ कार्डियक फेलियर आपको मिल सकते हैं इफ द चाइल्ड इज गोइंग इनटू द कार्डियक फेलियर. तो कार्डियक फेलियर के साइंस में वी हैव डिलेड कैपिलरी रीफिल टाइम है, पेरिफेरल पल्सेस आर रिड्यूस्ड, हेपेटोमेगैली मिल सकती है आपको बिकॉज ऑफ द कंजेशन, बिकॉज बेसिकली दिस इज अ कंजेस्टिव कार्डियक फेलियर. तो हेपेटोमेगैली मिलती है आपको बिकॉज ऑफ द कंजेशन एट द लिवर. यू गेट पेरिफेरल एडीमा एंड यू गेट द पल्मोनरी एडीमा. All these signs you can elicit easily on your clinical examination. आप जब भी कार्डाइटिस के लिए evaluate कर रहे हो, look for hematomegaly, look for peripheral edema and look for pulmonary edema. Now, how to look for pulmonary edema? Basically, pulmonary edema is always the collection of fluid on the dependent parts. तो pulmonary edema में dependent part of the lungs आपका जो है वो lung की bases है. तो lung bases पे when you auscultate the lung bases, you get fine crepitations at the lung bases. And to auscultate the lung bases, you have to keep your stethoscope on the posterior aspect of your chest because lung bases are best heard on the posterior aspect. तो आपने पीछे से बच्चे को एग्जामिन करना है. From the posterior aspect, you have to examine a child and you have to listen with a stethoscope and you have to look for the fine rails or freckles that are present and that are signs of the pulmonary edema. Labs करा के हम एक्सरे करा के तो हम देख ही सकते हैं, but clinical findings पे भी आपको pulmonary edema जो है वो you can identify on clinical grounds also. Then there are signs of the endocarditis. Endocarditis में as we have already tell कि endocarditis में involvement of the valve है, तो valve की involvement में you will get a cardiac murmur. And valve of the murmur of mitral regurgitation हमने अभी डिस्कस किया कि pensystolic murmur at the apex which is radiating to the axilla is a classical murmur of the mitral regurgitation. उसके साथ साथ अगर कोई और valve involved है आपके पास, like aortic insufficiency, second most frequent valve to get involved in the rheumatic fever is your aortic valve. तो अगर aortic valve की involvement है तो you get a diastolic murmur at the aortic area. Heart valve के areas you all know very well, so you get a high pitched diastolic murmur which is the murmur of aortic insufficiency at the aortic area in patients in whom you get the involvement of both the mitral and the aortic valve. तो ये clinical examination आपने करना है. For arthritis आपने individual joints को जो है वो एग्जामिन करना है to look for the signs of inflammation as well as you have to look for the range of motion. While carditis के लिए you have to check for the heart rate. आपने हार्ट रेट लेना है, ब्लड प्रेशर लेना है, पेरिफेरल पल्सेस देखनी है, पल्मोनरी एडीमा देखना है, पेरिफेरल एडीमा देखना है, हेपेटोमेगैली के लिए देखना है एंड यू हैव टू लुक फॉर द जेवीपी एज वेल. तो ये सब सीएचएफ की फाइंडिंग्स आपने जो है वो आइडेंटिफाई करना है. ठीक है. कार्डाइटिस जो है उसमें एक इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ ये है कि समटाइम्स देयर इज सब क्लिनिकल आर्थराइटिस. आपको साइन एंड सिम्टम्स नहीं मिलते हैं, बट व्हेन यू गो फॉर द एकोकार्डियोग्राफी ऑन योर सस्पेशन, यू आर स्ट्रांगली सस्पेक्टिंग दैट दिस चाइल्ड इज हैविंग कार्डाइटिस. तो लाइक रोमैटिक फीवर के साथ प्रेजेंट किया है और उसमें आपको मेजर मैनिफेस्टेशंस के अंदर सपोज पॉलीआर्थराइटिस मिल रहा है. नाउ यू वांट टू रूल आउट कि कार्डाइटिस है या नहीं है, तो आपने क्लिनिकल एग्जामिनेशन किया, यू डू नॉट गेट द साइंस ऑफ कार्डाइटिस apart from mild tachycardia. So in that case, you have to perform an echocardiography because sometimes the carditis may be subclinical. You do not get the murmur of mitral regurgitation, but when you do the echocardiography, you can see a jet of blood over the mitral area. तो echocardiography के ऊपर भी अगर आपको जो है वो valve की involvement मिल जाती है, तो this is also considered as one of the major manifestation of the rheumatic fever. Okay. Echocardio में you can look for the pericardial effusion. You can see for the decreased contractility of the heart and the involvement of the aortic and mitral regurgitation. So echo has to be performed in every patient in whom you are suspecting rheumatic fever. Basic carditis आपको नहीं मिल रहा है clinical examination में, even then you have to go for echocardiography to rule out carditis because treatment differ करता है. अगर carditis है या carditis नहीं है तो treatment and prevention both are different in that cases. Now the third major manifestation of rheumatic fever is basically your chorea. Chorea is also known, the rheumatic chorea is also known as the Sydenham's chorea, and it occurs in about 10 to 15% cases of the acute rheumatic fever. It's also a very common finding in rheumatic fever, so 10 to 15% of the cases may you can identify chorea. Now, what is chorea? Because chorea is basically the involuntary, uncontrollable movements, and basically they are exaggerated by the stress and they disappear during sleep. This is the classical presentation of the chorea. Apart from that, the patient may present with the facial grimacing, incoordination, emotional lability, deterioration of the school performance, subtle neurological findings. They all constitute the presentation of Sydenham's chorea. There is one important thing to be noted when chorea is the isolated finding in patient in whom you are suspecting rheumatic chorea. In that patient, even if the anti-streptolysin O titers are not that elevated, you can make the diagnosis of rheumatic fever, because it has been seen that uh, it takes a longer time to develop chorea after the rheumatic fever. It may be there may be a latent period of years even. So you may not get elevated anti-streptolysin O titers, because इसमें lucid interval बहुत ज़्यादा बड़ा होता है. बाज़ औक़ात chorea may present after years of having initial attack of rheumatic fever. तो उस particular case के अंदर आपको anti-streptolysin का rising titer नहीं मिलता है, because latent period is very long. So rising titer you may not get in patients who are in whom the कोरिया इज द आइसोलेटेड फाइंडिंग ऑफ द मेजर मैनिफेस्टेशन, जो है सिर्फ कोरिया के साथ बच्चा प्रेजेंट कर रहा है. तो ये एक पर्टिकुलर एक्सेप्शन है टू द जोन्स क्राइटेरिया कि इफ द पेशेंट इज प्रेजेंटिंग विद कोरिया, तो उस केस में यू मे नॉट गेट द सपोर्टिव एविडेंस ऑफ द स्ट्रेप्टोकोकल इन्फेक्शन. दिस इज द वन नोटेबल एक्सेप्शन ऑफ द जोन्स क्राइटेरिया. देन हाउ क्लिनिकल एग्जामिनेशन पे कोरिया आपने कौन से मैन्यूवर्स करने हैं to elicit chorea. तो इसमें हमारे पास there are 4 maneuvers which we perform in patients with chorea. Number 1 is the milkmaid's grip. You ask the patient and you will notice contraction of the hand muscles when you ask them to squeeze your fingers, shake your hands with you and squeeze your fingers. There are irregular contraction of the hands, contraction, relaxation, then relaxation. This is like a milkmaid's grip. So you have to do this examination when you are suspecting rheumatic chorea in any patient. Then when the child is asked to extend his arms, the arms get extended, pronated, and there is spooning of the arms. The arms are rotating and they are pronated. So when you ask the child to extend the arms, you will notice for the pronation of the extended arms. And then you ask the child to protrude his tongue. When you ask him to protrude his tongue, he cannot sustain his tongue in the protruded position. He keeps on moving his tongue in and out, in and out. This is known as the darting movements of the tongue. And number 4 is the deterioration of the handwriting. When you ask the patient to write something, you can easily find that there is deterioration. When you compare with the previous records, the previous handwriting of the child is not like the current handwriting of the child. So these are the clinical maneuvers that you have to do in patients with rheumatic chorea to identify that the patient is having rheumatic chorea. Now, the 4th major clinical manifestation was the erythema marginatum. Erythema marginatum is although rare, it is seen in about 1% of cases, but if it is present, then it is also a major manifestation of acute rheumatic fever. Erythema marginatum is basically a non-pruritic, snake-like, serpiginous macular rash, and it is red in the surrounding, and the central areas are somewhat pale. This is the classical presentation of erythema marginatum, and the predilected site for the erythema marginatum to occur is basically your trunk and your extremities. It never occurs on the face of the child. And another important thing of this erythema marginatum is it is accentuated by heat. So अगर warm water apply करते हैं इस area के ऊपर, so it got accentuated. So this is the erythema marginatum. Although a rare occurrence in rheumatic fever, but constitute a major criteria. Then number 5th is the subcutaneous nodules. The nodules you can see on the extensor surfaces of the body, and it is also a rare occurrence in rheumatic fever, seen in about only less than 1% of the 1% of the patients who are presenting with the acute rheumatic fever. And these are present near the bony prominences, like elbow region के ऊपर. You have to palpate the extensor surfaces of the limbs, और वहाँ पे आपने जो है वो you have to look for the bony nodules के लिए आपने देखना है near the bony prominences. Now, this is how you diagnose the patient with rheumatic fever. We have already discussed the presence of two major manifestations or one major and two minor manifestations constitute your rheumatic fever along with the laboratory evidence of the preceding group A streptococcal infection. तो labs हम already minor criteria में we have already discussed कि हमने ESR करवाना है, we have to do the CRP, that is C reactive protein. उसके अलावा आपने ECG करवाना है to look for the prolonged PR interval. Second important thing to identify the group A streptococcal infection, you can go for the throat culture, throat swab आप भिजवा दें patient की for the group A streptococcus, और rapid test के अंदर आप जो है वो एंटीजेंस करा सकते हैं स्ट्रेप्टोकोकल. उसमें मोस्ट कॉमनली वी डू एंटी स्ट्रेप्टोलाइसिन ओ टाइटर which is either elevated at the initial presentation, or you if keep on doing it, then rising titers जो हैं they are significant and they are seen in about 80 to 85% of the cases. Then apart from anti-streptolysin O, there are certain other antigens like anti-DNase, anti-hyaluronidase, which are all collectively can be tested, and if they are tested collectively, then sensitivity increases from 80 to 85 to 95 to 100% of the cases. Anti-streptolysin जो है वो आपको 100% cases में elevated नहीं मिल सकता है. So you cannot say that the child did not had a preceding streptococcal A infection. तो उसके लिए आप क्या करा सकते हो, इसका रैपिड टेस्ट होता है जिसके अंदर ये सारे एंटीजेंस जो हैं वो सारी एंटीबॉडीज जो है वो टेस्ट की जाती हैं, और इसमें फिर आपकी सेंसिटिविटी इंक्रीजेस टू 95 to 100% केसेस. ओके, this we have already discussed that except for the chorea, acute findings always coincide with the peak anti-streptolysin O titers. ठीक है, chorea is only the notable exception for the Jones criteria. Now, after the laboratory findings, when you have diagnosed that the patient is suffering from rheumatic fever, now you have to treat that patient for the to prevent the current problems that the child is facing, and also for the prevention of the recurrent attacks of rheumatic fever. So the treatment may we have the antibiotic therapy, the anti-inflammatory therapy is basically to eradicate the gas infection. Group A जो आपका streptococcus है उसको eradicate करना है. The antibiotic therapy is preventive, it is therapeutic, and it is prophylactic. Preventive में हमारे पास primary prevention है. Primary prevention is to prevent the first attack of rheumatic fever. आप group A streptococcal sore throat को effectively treat कर दें तो you can prevent the child from developing rheumatic fever later on. So this is known as the primary prevention. Before rheumatic fever, you have to prevent the presence or the occurrence of the rheumatic fever. For that, you have to effectively eradicate group A streptococcal infection. You have to effectively treat the group A streptococcal sore throat. So any child who is presenting to you, you are sitting in the OPD, any child who is presenting to you with a sore throat, so always examine करें आप उसका throat. IMNCI के अंदर there is a clear differentiation कि आप viral sore throat को bacterial sore throat से कैसे differentiate करते हैं. Keep those points in your mind and effectively treat the streptococcal sore throat, because usually we give antibiotic therapy in sore throat for 5 days, but to eradicate the gas infection you have to give antibiotic for 10 days. तो इसलिए आपने इसको identify करना है, properly treat करना है to prevent the rheumatic fever occurring later in life. So this is known as the primary prevention. Then secondly हमारे पास prophylactic therapy है antibiotics की, because once the child is having a rheumatic fever, now he is at risk of developing recurrence of rheumatic fever. और जितना recurrence होगा उतना valvular damage होता है, उतना आपका जो है वो rheumatic heart disease के chances जो है वो increase हो जाते हैं. तो prophylactic antibiotics हम देते हैं in patients with rheumatic fever to prevent the second episode of rheumatic fever. ठीक है, तो एंटीबायोटिक इज ऑल्सो प्रोफाइलैक्टिक. एंड देन थेराप्यूटिक, जो करंट इन्फेक्शन में करंट ट्रोमेटिक फीवर के साथ बच्चा आपके पास प्रेजेंट हुआ है, इन दैट पेशेंट ऑल्सो यू हैव टू गिव एंटीबायोटिक्स टू इरेडिकेट दी गैस इन्फेक्शन. तो आपने 10 डेज तक को उसको ट्रीटमेंट देना है ओरल एंटीबायोटिक्स का, और इंट्रामस्कुलर इंजेक्शन ऑफ बेंजाथीन पेनिसिलिन का सिंगल डोज अगर आप लगा दें तो इट हेल्प्स इन इरेडिकेटिंग द गैस इन्फेक्शन. सो हमारी करंट प्रैक्टिस में वी प्रेफर इंट्रामस्कुलर इंजेक्शन ऑफ बेंजाथीन पेनिसिलिन बिकॉज द कंप्लायंस इज गुड, and with oral treatment for 10 days you have to give antibiotic, the compliance is very poor. So the therapeutic approach, we can go for parenteral therapy, or we can go for the oral therapy. Then after the antibiotic therapy we have the anti-inflammatory therapy. हमने अभी ये पढ़ा है कि दिस इज अ पोस्ट इन्फेक्शियस एंड इन्फ्लेमेटरी डिसऑर्डर, तो आपने एंटी इन्फ्लेमेटरी मेडिसिन देनी है. There are two main drugs that we use as anti-inflammatory medications in patients with rheumatic fever. One are the salicylates. आपने salicylates use करना है in every patient who is presenting to you with the rheumatic fever with either with your polyarthritis or with the carditis. Both cases के अंदर आपने salicylates जो है वो देना है. आर्थराइटिस में वी गिव सैलिसाइलेट्स एज एन एंटी इन्फ्लेमेटरी एनाल्जेसिक, और वहाँ पे हाई डोज में आपने सैलिसाइलेट्स देना है. अबाउट 80 to 100 मिलीग्राम पर किलोग्राम तक हम सैलिसाइलेट्स पे चले जाते हैं. इवन कार्डाइटिस के अंदर भी इनिशियली आपने हाई डोज सैलिसाइलेट देना है बिकॉज ऑफ द एंटी इन्फ्लेमेटरी इफेक्ट, बिकॉज हार्ट पे भी इन्फ्लेमेशन है तो इट हैज इट्स एंटी इन्फ्लेमेटरी इफेक्ट्स, तो आपने उसके लिए देना है. देन आपने इसकी डोज को टेपर करके एंटी प्लेटलेट इफेक्ट के लिए कंटिन्यू करना है, बिकॉज कार्डाइटिस के अंदर आपने जो है वो पेशेंट को एंटी प्लेटलेट एक्टिविटी भी, एंटी प्लेटलेट इफेक्ट के लिए भी सैलिसाइलेट यूज करना होता है. तो सैलिसाइलेट एट हायर डोज इज एंटी इन्फ्लेमेटरी, एट लोअर डोज लाइक 3 to 5 मिलीग्राम पर किलोग्राम इट इज एंटी प्लेटलेट. सो उसमें थ्रोम्बोसिस को प्रिवेंट करने के लिए आपने सैलिसाइलेट्स कंटिन्यू करना है इन पेशेंट्स विद कार्डाइटिस और विद पॉलीआर्थराइटिस. देन कॉर्टिकोस्टेरॉइड्स. कॉर्टिकोस्टेरॉइड्स आपने देना है इन एनी पेशेंट हु इज प्रेजेंटिंग विद कार्डाइटिस, वेदर क्लिनिकल और सब क्लिनिकल. उन दोनों पेशेंट्स के अंदर आपने जो है वो कॉर्टिकोस्टेरॉइड्स प्रिस्क्राइब करने हैं. कार्डाइटिस के साथ प्रेजेंट कर रहा है, कार्डियोमेगाली के साथ कर रहा है, कंजेस्टेड हार्ट फेलियर के साथ प्रेजेंट कर रहा है, एक्सरे या एकोकार्डियोग्राफिक एविडेंस है कार्डाइटिस का, इन सारे पेशेंट्स के अंदर आपने कॉर्टिकोस्टेरॉइड्स भी जो है वो साथ में स्टार्ट कर देने हैं. ठीक है. और उसके साथ साथ सपोर्टिव थेरेपी है फॉर दी हार्ट फेलियर. हार्ट फेलियर के अंदर सपोर्टिव थेरेपी में यू गिव रेस्ट टू द पेशेंट. आपने प्री लोड आफ्टर लोड रिडक्शन के लिए यू हैव टू गिव डायूरेटिक्स and you have to give digoxin. Digoxin will help in improving the contractility of the heart, and diuretics will effectively decrease the workload on the heart, especially the preload. जो प्रीलोड हार्ट के ऊपर एक्सर्ट कर रहा है उसको डिक्रीज करने के लिए यू हैव टू गिव डायूरेटिक्स और कॉर्टिकोस्टेरॉइड्स. वी हैव ऑलरेडी डिस्कस्ड कि एवरी पेशेंट विद कार्डाइटिस यू हैव टू गिव कॉर्टिकोस्टेरॉइड्स. देन फॉर कोरिया, जो थर्ड इंपॉर्टेंट मेजर मैनिफेस्टेशन हमारे पास था, टू ट्रीट कोरिया इफेक्टिवली वी हैव मल्टीपल ऑप्शंस. यूजुअली वी गिव फिनोबार्बिटॉल और हेलोपेरिडॉल. इन सर्टेन केसेस हम क्लोरप्रोमाजीन पे भी जा सकते हैं. इफ द कोरिया इज नॉट इफेक्टिवली कंट्रोल विद फिनोबार्बिटॉल और हेलोपेरिडॉल तो हम ऐड ऑन कर सकते हैं क्लोरप्रोमाजीन इसके अंदर. तो दिस इज बेसिकली द ब्रॉड ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ द रूमेटिक फीवर. नाउ आपने करंट एपिसोड ऑफ रूमेटिक फीवर ट्रीट कर लिया है, बट यू ऑल्सो हैव टू गिव prophylaxis to prevent the recurrence of rheumatic fever, because एक मरतबा rheumatic fever हुआ, there are chances of recurrence, और जितना टाइम वो रिकर करेगा उतना हार्ट आपका जो है वो डैमेज होगा, और लॉन्ग टर्म सीक्वली ऑफ जो आपका rheumatic fever है उसको प्रिवेंट करने के लिए you have to give prophylactic antibiotics in every child who has presented to you with the rheumatic fever. अब इसमें we have options, either we can go for parenteral therapy or we can go for oral therapy. Both are effective. डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द पेशेंट चॉइस एंड कंप्लायंस हम डिसाइड करते हैं कि हमें पेशेंट को क्या देना है. बेंजाथीन पेनिसिलिन जी, दिस इज वेरी इफेक्टिव इन इरेडिकेटिंग गैस. सो 1.2 million units every 4 weeks in a child who is more than 60 pounds, और 60,000 international units for child who is less than 60 pounds. आपने हर महीने उसको जो है वो बेंजाथीन पेनिसिलिन का एक इंजेक्शन इंट्रामस्कुलर लगाना. ठीक है. दिस हैज टू बी गिवन इंट्रामस्कुलर. पेनफुल होता है, बट इसमें द एडवांटेज विद द बेंजाथीन पेनिसिलिन इज दी वंस मंथली थेरेपी. अगर पेनफुल इंजेक्शन बच्चा टॉलरेट नहीं कर रहा है, कंप्लायंस नहीं आ रहा है पेनफुल इंजेक्शंस के साथ, इंट्रामस्कुलर के साथ, इन दैट केसेस आप ओरल थेरेपी पे जा सकते हैं. ओरल थेरेपी में वी हैव ऑप्शंस लाइक वी कैन गिव पेनिसिलिन बी 250 मिलीग्राम ट्वाइस डेली orally, और वी कैन गो फॉर द सल्फाडायाजीन 0.5 ग्राम डेली in less than 60, या फिर 1 gram daily in more than 60 pounds. Both sulfadiazine और sulfasalazole, दोनों drugs can be given if the patient is not allergic to sulfa drugs. तो ये हमारे पास options हैं. Otherwise penicillin B, and if the patient is allergic to penicillin, हमारे पास बहुत सारे patients होते हैं who are allergic to penicillin, तो in those patients macrolide, we have the option of macrolides like erythromycin we can give 250 milligram twice daily orally. Now, for how long we have to continue this prophylaxis? This depends upon the presentation, the initial presentation of the child. The prophylaxis is continued for 5 years or until 21 years of age, whichever is longer. Remember, whichever is longer. if there was no carditis. Suppose बच्चे को carditis नहीं हुआ था, he just presented with polyarthritis, but even in that case the child may have carditis later in life. तो उस केस में भी आपने you have to give the prophylaxis, and prophylaxis should be continued for 5 years or until 21 years of age, whichever is longer. सपोज कोई बच्चा आपके पास 10 years के ऊपर आता है, तो उस बच्चे में आपने until 21 years देना है, यानी कि 11 years तक prophylaxis देना है, ठीक है। और अगर कोई बच्चा आपके पास 20 years से आता है, तो आपने उसको 5 years तक फर्दर प्रोफाइलैक्सिस देना है, ना कि 21 years से, बिकॉज विच एवर इज लॉन्गर यू हैव टू गिव प्रोफाइलैक्सिस फॉर दैट पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. एंड इफ द चाइल्ड हैड कार्डाइटिस एट द इनिशियल प्रेजेंटेशन, तो प्रोफाइलैक्सिस जो है उसका ड्यूरेशन बढ़ जाता है. अगर कार्डाइटिस है, देयर इज मोर रिस्क ऑफ वेल्वुलर डैमेज, तो वहां पे प्रोफाइलैक्सिस जो है वो आपका ड्यूरेशन इंक्रीज हो जाता है टू 10 years और अंटिल 21 years ऑफ एज, विच एवर इज लॉन्गर, ठीक है। और इफ द चाइल्ड हैज रेजिडुअल हार्ट डिजीज, आपने कुछ अरसे के बाद एको रिपीट करवाया, अगर माइट्रल रिगर्जिटेशन रिजॉल्व नहीं हुआ है, रेजिडुअल डैमेज हो गया है हार्ट के साथ, तो इन दैट केस द प्रोफाइलैक्सिस इज कंटिन्यूड फॉर लाइफ लॉन्ग, ठीक है। तो इट ऑल डिपेंड्स अपॉन द प्रेजेंस ऑफ द कार्डाइटिस. So this completes our rheumatic fever. Now if you have any like questions regarding rheumatic fever, you are welcome to you are welcome for the questions, but so that we can continue for the Kawasaki disease after that. I'm opening your chat section. You can write your questions, you can write your queries, and I'll be answering those in right now. I cannot see any questions right now, so we can move on to the next topic. Okay, let's move on to the second important acquired heart disease, that is the Kawasaki disease. You all must have heard this name, Kawasaki disease. Basically, Kawasaki disease is an acute febrile illness of childhood. This is the disease of childhood. This is where you get the patients with Kawasaki disease most of the time only in pediatric population. It is seen worldwide in all populations. It is not limited to the developing part of the world. It is also occurring in the developed part of the world. So it is occurring in the worldwide in all the populations. Basically, Kawasaki disease, what is Kawasaki disease? This is basically a vasculitis of the medium size arteries. It has got a predilection for the medium size arteries. It is the counterpart of the polyarthritis nodosa in the younger population. This is also, for that reason, it is also known as infantile polyarthritis nodosa. So Kawasaki disease is basically a vasculitis, and it has got a predilection for the coronary arteries. अगर हम medium sized arteries की भी बात करें, तो in those medium sized arteries it has got a predilection for the coronary arteries. That's why it is responsible for causing the heart disease. Okay, if it is not treated properly, then about 1/4 of the patients experience coronary artery abnormalities, and the most common coronary artery abnormalities in patients with Kawasaki disease include the formation of the aneurysms and then the subsequent fear of rupture of that aneurysm. This is the most common complication of the Kawasaki disease, and it is the leading cause of acquired heart disease in children in most developed countries like US and Japan. जापान के अंदर भी कावासाकी डिजीज का इंसिडेंस बहुत हाई मिलता है. तो डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज में यू डू नॉट गेट रूमेटिक फीवर मोर फ्रीक्वेंटली, यू गेट कावासाकी डिजीज मोस्ट फ्रीक्वेंटली. ओके, कमिंग टू द etiology, what causes the Kawasaki disease? Again, the pathogenesis remains unknown. There are multiple things. Okay, sorry for the disturbance. Okay, there are multiple risk factors, and all those risk factors are combined as a proposed theory of the Kawasaki disease. Basically, it has been said that it has an infectious origin, it has a genetic role, it has got an environmental trigger, but all these things contribute to the actual phenotype of Kawasaki disease. The genetic role is evidenced by the higher risk in Asian children, and the clinical findings like the presence of the rash, the fever, the lymph nodes. These clinical findings suggest that there may be a possible infectious etiology, but never a single organism is identified as the cause of Kawasaki disease. And then the environmental triggers are also there, which lead to the phenotype of Kawasaki in genetically predisposed individuals. Now, about the epidemiology, basically it is the disease of early childhood. The median age is around 2 to 3 years, and majority of the children who are coming to you with Kawasaki disease are under 5 years of age. It has got higher susceptibility in boys, and Asian and Pacific Islander children are at greater risk for development of the Kawasaki disease. Now, how do the Kawasaki disease present? Fever is the one consistent finding in Kawasaki disease. The child who is having Kawasaki disease must have a fever. And the fever of Kawasaki is characteristically a high fever, more than 101 degree Fahrenheit or more than 38 degrees centigrade, unremitting and unresponsive to antibiotics. This is the classical presentation of fever in patients with Kawasaki disease, that this is unremitting, continuous, and this is unresponsive to antibiotics. You start antibiotics in patients with Kawasaki disease, it may not result in resolution of the antibiotic. It may not result in the resolution of the fever. And along with the fever, there are 5 clinical criteria. These 5 clinical criteria, out of these 5, at least 4 are required to make the diagnosis of Kawasaki disease. And what are those 5 principal clinical criteria? Number 1, presence of bilateral, non-exudative bulbar conjunctival injection, that is redness of your bulbar conjunctiva without any pus. This is the first manifestation, clinical manifestation. Bilateral, it should be present in both the eyes. Non-exudative, that is non-suppurative, not containing pus. Bulbar conjunctival injection, that is the redness of the eye. Number 2 is the erythema of the oral and pharyngeal mucosa. Your oral and pharyngeal mucosa becomes red, and there is strawberry tongue, because in the red oral mucosa there is prominence of the papilla, which gives the appearance of a strawberry tongue, and dry cracked lips. These are the second principal criteria for the diagnosis of Kawasaki disease. Just like rheumatic fever, this is again a clinical thing to be the diagnosis should be made on the clinical grounds in patients with Kawasaki disease, just like the rheumatic fever. Then edema and erythema of the hands and feet. There are certain changes in the extremities you have to notice for. There is edema of the hands, and there is edema. Along with edema, the hands become red also. So they are swollen and they are red, the hands and feet. And after second or third week of illness, you can see the desquamation also on the extremities. So this is the third major criteria of the Kawasaki disease. Then number 4 is the presence of the polymorphous exanthem. That is a polymorphous rash. The rash in Kawasaki can be macular, it can be maculopapular, it can be serpiginous sort of rash, it can be erythema marginatum. Any type of rash can be there in the Kawasaki disease, but it is more accentuated in your groin area. Groin area के अंदर जो है उसकी accentuation ज़्यादा है. The polymorphous exanthem is the 4th clinical criteria, and the 5th and the last is the non-suppurative cervical lymphadenopathy, more than 1.5 centimeters in size. You remember one thing, less than 1.5 centimeters के अगर cervical lymph nodes हैं, they are always considered as insignificant. और more than 5 centimeters की cervical lymphadenopathy है, so this is considered as significant, especially for your Kawasaki disease. So fever along with the 5 clinical criteria are required. Out of 5, 4 are basically required to make the diagnosis of Kawasaki disease. Now I'll show you certain pictures of these. Okay, this is the classical strawberry tongue of the Kawasaki disease. As you can see, this strawberry tongue also occurs in patients with scarlet fever, which is a close differential diagnosis of Kawasaki disease. But there are certain other features in scarlet fever के उसके अंदर आपको जो है वो sore throat, pharyngitis बहुत मार्क मिलता है scarlet fever के साथ, तो which is not there in the और उसका rash scarlet fever का बड़ा typical होता है, ठीक है ना, and it has got a prompt response to the antibiotics. Unlike Kawasaki disease, scarlet fever के अंदर there is a prompt response to antibiotics. So scarlet fever is, yes, the main differential diagnosis of your Kawasaki disease because of this these findings on the clinical examination. This is the bulbar injection, which is, you can see, this is the non-suppurative or non-exudative, and it has got the sparing of this limbus area. This is also characteristic of Kawasaki disease. The sclera or cornea का जहाँ पर junction है, which is known as limbus, इसकी sparing हो जाती है. Apart from that, you see the whole of the bulbar conjunctiva is red. So this is the one of the clinical criteria of Kawasaki. This is the changes you appreciate in the hands. आपको इसमें नजर आ रहा होगा कि the hand are edematous. इसमें आपको swollen hand नजर आ रहे हैं and they are somewhat red also. So red and swollen hand is the typical feature of Kawasaki disease. अच्छा, एक और क्लोज क्लिनिकल डिफरेंशियल हमारे पास मीजल्स होता है. मीजल्स के अंदर भी यू गेट फीवर, यू गेट लिम्फेडिनोपैथी, यू गेट कंजक्टिवाइटिस. बट मीजल्स के अंदर कंजक्टिवाइटिस इज यूजुअली पसी डिस्चार्ज होता है इसके अंदर आपका मीजल्स के अंदर. बट कावासाकी जो है इसमें कोई पस डिस्चार्ज आपको नहीं मिलता. देन और रैश ऑफ मीजल्स इज ऑल्सो लाइक उसके अंदर आपका मैक्यूलोपैपुलर रैश है विच स्टार्टेड फ्रॉम द फेस एंड प्रोग्रेस डाउनवर्ड. जबकि कावासाकी में आपको पॉलीमॉर्फस रैश मिलता है, किसी भी तरह का रैश मिल सकता है. These are the changes that you appreciate in the hands. There is the periungual desquamation. This is basically a late feature of Kawasaki disease. It occurs after या तो second week of illness के अंदर आपको मिलता है या third week of illness के अंदर आपको ये periungual desquamation नजर आती है. This is also a feature of Kawasaki disease, but a late feature. Initial presentation में अगर आप hands में देखेंगे तो there is erythema and edema of the hands. Okay. Apart from these typical findings, there are certain other findings. Multi-system disorder है इसके अंदर. Basically आपको other system के अंदर भी जो है वो findings मिल सकती हैं. Like sorry, cardiovascular system में the child may present with the myocarditis. कैपिलरी रिफिल टाइम आपका डिक्रीज होता है, टेकिकार्डिया होता है, पल्सेस जो है वो आपकी डिक्रीज होती हैं, हेपेटोमेगाली मिल सकती है, साइंस ऑफ कंजेस्टिव कार्डियक फेलियर मिल सकते हैं. पेरिकार्डाइटिस के अंदर पेरिकार्डियल फ्रिक्शन रब मिल सकती है आपको, एक्सरे के ऊपर पेरिकार्डाइटिस मिल सकती है, वेल्वुलर रिगर्जिटेशन का मर्मर मिल सकता है. देन वी हैव द कोरोनरी आर्टरी एब्नॉर्मैलिटीज व्हिच कैन बी आइडेंटिफाइड ऑन द एकोकार्डियोग्राफी. तो कोरोनरी आर्टरीज की डायलिटेशन हो जाती है तो वो आप आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं ऑन द एको. And later on aneurysm formation may be there of the coronary arteries as well as the non-coronary arteries. दोनों क्योंकि because it has got a predilection for the medium-sized arteries, most likely coronary, but other arteries can also be involved. Even आपकी femoral, popliteal, axillary, brachial, ये arteries भी क्योंकि medium-sized arteries हैं तो ये उनकी involvement भी आपको कावासाकी में मिल सकती है. But most of the time we get the involvement of the coronary arteries. Then in the respiratory system there is peribronchial and interstitial infiltrates on the chest. Röntgenogram अगर आप chest और X-ray order करते हैं तो you can identify these infiltrates on the chest X-ray. In the gastrointestinal tract there may be diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, hepatic dysfunction or the hydrops of gallbladder which can be identified on the ultrasound of the abdomen. Central nervous system में the patient may present with the aseptic meningitis. Extreme irritability के साथ बच्चा present करता है. And when you tap the CSF for the when you tap the CSF और आप उसको सेंड करते हैं फॉर द डिटेल रिपोर्ट तो उसमें आपको जो है वो एलिवेटेड प्रोटीन्स मिलते हैं विदाउट द एविडेंस ऑफ द ऑर्गेनिज्म. आपको कोई ऑर्गेनिज्म नहीं मिलता है बट प्रोटीन्स एलिवेशन और सेल काउंट्स आपको जो है इसके अंदर एलिवेटेड मिलते हैं. दिस इज द एसेप्टिक मेनिंजाइटिस. अलॉन्ग विद दैट सेंसरी न्यूरल हियरिंग लॉस आपको मिल सकता है, फेशियल नर्व पैल्सी मिल सकती है इन कावासाकी डिजीज. एंड इन द जेनिटल यूरिनरी सिस्टम देयर मे बी यूरिथ्राइटिस और मिएटाइटिस, इन्फ्लेमेशन ऑफ द यूरिथ्रा या फिर मिएटस के ऊपर आपको साइंस ऑफ इन्फ्लेमेशन आपको मिल सकते हैं. So these are the other supportive findings, but ये हमारा included नहीं है to make the diagnosis of Kawasaki disease. Kawasaki disease का जो diagnosis आपने बनाना है on the basis of the presence of fever and 4 of the 5 major clinical manifestations जो हमने अभी discuss की थी वो अगर present हैं आपके पास then only you make the diagnosis of Kawasaki disease और फिर उसको further हम laboratories से जो है वो further उसको अपनी diagnosis को confirm करते हैं. तो laboratory findings that you get in patients with Kawasaki disease, अगर आप CBC order करें then you can have an anemia. Along with anemia you can get leukocytosis with the predilection of the neutrophils. Neutrophilia आपको मिलता है in the leukocytosis और thrombocytosis after the first week of the illness. Initial जब आप बच्चा आपके पास present कर रहा है, suppose 4th या 5th day पे बच्चा आपके पास present कर रहा है, उस वक्त आप CBC कराते हो तो you will not get a thrombocytosis in the first week. The thrombocytosis later जो है वो occurrence है. Usually it starts after the first week has been completed और 8th या 10th day पे अगर आप CBC repeat कराते हैं तो you get classical thrombocytosis. 7 lakh, 8 lakh, 10 lakhs का आपको जो है वो platelet count मिलता है. Then the acute phase reactants आपको elevated मिलते हैं, that is the ESR and the C-reactive protein, ये आपकी elevation हो जाती है इन सब. Then lipid profile आप करवाते हैं in every patient with Kawasaki disease. इसको आपने label कर लिया है with Kawasaki on the clinical grounds. आपने lipid profile जरूर करवाना है because abnormalities आपको मिलती हैं with the lipid profile. There may be hypoalbuminemia, hyponatremia, elevation of the liver transaminases. There may be sterile pyuria that is present of the pus cells in the urine. देयर मे बी प्लियोसाइटोसिस ऑफ द CSF, और अगर आप इवन साइनोवियल फ्लूइड को अगर बाज़-औक़ात हम कराते हैं तो उसमें भी जो है वो आपके सेल काउंट्स इंक्रीज हो जाते हैं, तो यू गेट प्लियोसाइटोसिस इन द CSF आल्सो एंड द साइनोवियल फ्लूइड आल्सो. Diagnosis के लिए we have already discussed that the presence of fever for at least 4 days, unremitting fever for at least 4 days, and 4 of 5 of the other principal clinical criteria of the illness have to be there to make a diagnosis of classic Kawasaki disease. कुछ पेशेंट्स के अंदर जो है वो आपको persistent fever तो मिलता है, बट जो आपके clinical criteria हैं, अब 4 सपोज आपको 4 नहीं मिल रहे हैं, आपको 3 मिल रहे हैं, and you have a strong suspicion, no, this is nothing else, this is Kawasaki disease. तो in that cases जहाँ पे आपका strong suspicion है बट क्लिनिकल क्राइटेरिया आपको नहीं मिल रहा है, तो इन दोज पेशेंट्स आपको लेबोरेटरी क्राइटेरिया या एकोकार्डियोग्राफिक एविडेंस मिल जाता है, तो दिस कैन ऑल्सो असिस्ट इन मेकिंग द डायग्नोसिस ऑफ कावासाकी डिजीज. सपोज बच्चा आपके पास तीसरे या चौथे दिन प्रेजेंट कर जाता है, उस वक्त क्लिनिकल मैनिफेस्टेशंस इतनी ज़्यादा जो है वो आपको नहीं मिलती हैं, तो इन दैट केस टू मेक अ डायग्नोसिस ऑफ कावासाकी डिजीज, बिकॉज आप जितना अर्ली डायग्नोज करोगे उतना अर्ली आप ट्रीटमेंट स्टार्ट करोगे. अर्ली ट्रीटमेंट इज द की टू प्रिवेंट कोरोनरी आर्टरी एब्नॉर्मैलिटीज. जितना अर्ली आपने ट्रीटमेंट स्टार्ट किया उतना कॉम्प्लिकेशन का और बकिया चीज़ों का रिस्क आपका जो है वो बेहतर हो जाता है. सो दैट्स व्हाई यू वांट टू मेक द डायग्नोसिस अर्लियर. So in that case, the laboratory and the echocardiographic data can help you in making the diagnosis of Kawasaki disease, and in that case, you call it atypical or incomplete Kawasaki disease. If the features are yet to evolve, but क्योंकि आप treatment start कर रहे हो, they may not evolve even later. या फिर हो सकता है कि later on आपको कुछ features उसमें से मिल जाएं, and the patient comes into the classic Kawasaki disease. Now, when to perform echocardiography? आप echocardiography कब कराते हो? In any patient in whom you are suspecting Kawasaki, जब बच्चा आपके पास initial presentation पे आ गया है, you order an echocardiogram. आपने at the time of diagnosis एक echo करा लेना, ठीक है? And then usually we repeat it after 2 weeks. 14 days पे हम एक और echo कराते हैं, क्योंकि अगर first echo आपका normal आया है, it does not rule out कि coronary abnormalities जो हैं वो अब नहीं होंगी. Even after 2 weeks of the illness, आपको coronary artery abnormalities even up to 8 weeks तक मिल सकती हैं. So you have to repeat an X-ray, an echocardiography at the second week of the illness, second to third week के दरमियान में आप करा लें. Then if again that echocardiography is also normal, then you have to repeat it at 8 weeks, यानी कि 2 महीने के बाद आपने जब disease start हुई है, उसके 2 महीने के बाद भी आपने echocardiography करानी है to rule out the presence of coronary artery abnormalities. इवन देन अगर उसके बाद भी आपका जो है वो कावासाकी डिजीज का एको जो है वो नॉर्मल आ जाता है, कोरोनरी आर्टरी की डायमेंशंस बेसिकली डॉपलर कराते हैं एंड कोरोनरी आर्टरी की हम डायमेंशंस लेते हैं. इफ द डायमेंशंस आर नॉर्मल, लाइक लेस देन 2 मिलीमीटर की डायमेंशंस आपको मिल जाती हैं, तो दिस इज एन एब्सोल्युटली नॉर्मल echocardiography for the coronary abnormalities. But even in those patients, because there is a risk of later atherosclerosis in patients with Kawasaki, आपने annual echocardiography advise करना है in every patient who is coming to you with the Kawasaki disease. ठीक है, annual echo कराना है for the later risk of coronary atherosclerosis के लिए देखना है आपने. Okay. So this we have discussed that if the results are normal at 2 weeks, then repeat a study at 6 to 8 weeks after the onset of illness. If results of either of the initial studies are abnormal or the patient has recurrent symptoms, अब ये तो हमने बात की थी कि अगर आपकी जो है वो echo normal आ जाती है, but if the echo is not normal, आपकी coronary की dimensions जो हैं वो like 5 millimeter, 4 millimeter, 6 millimeter ज़्यादा आ जाती हैं, तो depending upon the clinical condition or the risk stratification, मैक्सिमम रिस्क होता है जब 8 मिलीमीटर से ज़्यादा का डायमेंशन होता है आपके पास, तो उसमें आप ज़्यादा फ्रीक्वेंटली एको करा सकते हो, बिकॉज जितना कोरोनरीज डायलेट होती हैं आपकी, उतना ज़्यादा जो है वो उसका एन्यूरिज्म का रप्चर होने का रिस्क होता है. तो उसको रप्चर होने का जो रिस्क है उसको देखने के लिए आप रिकरेंट जो है वो एकोकार्डियोग्राफी इंटरवल आपने अपनी इंस्टीट्यूशनल प्रैक्टिस के लिहाज से खुद आइडेंटिफाई करना होता है कि इस पेशेंट में मुझे एवरी डे कराना है, वीकली कराना है, 3 डेज़ पे कराना है, 4 डेज़ पे कराना है, ताकि आप कोरोनरीज का साइज़ मॉनिटर करते रहें कि जो आप ट्रीटमेंट दे रहे हैं उससे कोरोनरीज का साइज़ रिग्रेस हो रहा है या नहीं. ठीक है, एटलीस्ट इट इज़ नॉट इंक्रीजिंग. ओके. And in patients without abnormalities on the echocardiography, you perform echo and a lipid profile annually. आपने हर साल उस बच्चे का लिपिड प्रोफाइल करवाना है और एकोकार्डियोग्राफी कराना है because of the subsequent risk of atherosclerosis. Okay. हमने ऑलरेडी फर्स्ट उसमें स्लाइड में डिस्कस किया था कि कोरोनरी आर्टरी एन्यूरिज्म फॉर्मेशन का जो रिस्क होता है, इट इज़ देयर इन अबाउट 25% ऑफ द अनट्रीटेड पेशेंट्स. पेशेंट को अगर आपने ट्रीट कर लिया है तो रिस्क बहुत ही कम हो जाता है, लेस देन 5% हो जाता है। बट अगर अनट्रीटेड पेशेंट है तो देयर इज अ 25% रिस्क ऑफ डेवलपिंग कोरोनरी आर्टरी एन्यूरिज्म्स। तो आपने उसको प्रॉपरली जो है वो फॉलो करना है, एंड द रिस्क इज मैक्सिमम इन द सेकंड टू थर्ड वीक ऑफ इलनेस। ठीक है, so this is detected by the echocardiography, and giant coronary artery aneurysms that is more than 8 millimeter in size, they are the one who pose the greatest risk for rupture, thrombosis or stenosis and myocardial infarction. Obviously जब आपका rupture होगा तो cardiac tamponade, thrombosis, stenosis और myocardial infarction का risk उस patient के अंदर आपका जो है वो increase हो जाता है. So you have to look at those things. डिफरेंशियल डायग्नोसिस में इसकी जो प्रेजेंटेशन है, फीवर, रैश, लिम्फेडिनोपैथी, स्ट्रॉबेरी टंग, तो उसकी वजह से देयर आर मल्टीपल डिफरेंशियल डायग्नोसिस ऑफ कावासाकी डिजीज। वायरल इन्फेक्शंस में वी हैव एडिनो वायरस, उसमें भी आपको फीवर, रैश, लिम्फेडिनोपैथी मिल सकता है। मीजल्स इज आल्सो अ क्लोज डिफरेंशियल। एप्स्टीन बार वायरस के अंदर भी आपको जो है वो ओरल कैविटी के अंदर चेंजेस मिलते हैं। देन बैक्टीरियल इन्फेक्शंस में द मोस्ट क्लोज डिफरेंशियल इज द स्कारलेट फीवर। लेप्टोस्पायरोसिस के अंदर अगेन यू गेट लिम्फेडिनोपैथी, लेप्टोस्पायरोसिस के अंदर होती है, बट इसके अंदर आपको एक्सपोजर की हिस्ट्री मिल जाती है विद द एनिमल। बैक्टीरियल सर्वाइकल लिम्फेडिनाइटिस इज आल्सो अ डिफरेंशियल ऑफ कावासाकी डिजीज। एंड देन द रिमेटोलॉजिक डिजीज लाइक सिस्टमिक ऑनसेट जेआईए, उसके अंदर भी फीवर मिलता है, रैश मिलता है, बट जो इसके अंदर डिफरेंशिएटिंग पॉइंट है फ्रॉम द कावासाकी डिजीज इज द प्रेजेंस ऑफ विस्ट्रोमेगैली। सिस्टमिक ऑनसेट जेआईए के अंदर यू गेट हेपेटोमेगैली और स्प्लीनोमेगैली और बोथ। कावासाकी में यू डू नॉट गेट हेपेटोस्प्लीनोमेगैली। अदर नॉर्मली आपको कावासाकी के अंदर नहीं मिलता है हेपेटोमेगैली, बट अगर हार्ट फेलियर में चला जाए in that case you can get hepatomegaly, but normally you do not get visceromegaly in patients with Kawasaki disease. And then other etiologies में toxic shock syndrome है, drug hypersensitivity reactions है, Steven Johnson syndrome है because of rash. These are also included in the differential diagnosis. Now the phases of Kawasaki disease. The classical Kawasaki disease में आपके पास 3 phases हैं। acute febrile phase है, सब acute phase है, and then convalescent phase है। recovery वाला phase आपका convalescent phase है। first 2 weeks के अंदर जब coronary arteries abnormalities जो है वो less likely है, वो acute febrile phase है। and then the second phase के अंदर जो है वो risk of aneurysm and rupture जो है वो आपका highest है, तो this is known as the subacute phase. Treatment of Kawasaki के अंदर the mainstay of treatment is the IVIG. 2 grams per kg of IVIG is given as soon as the diagnosis is made. एंड देन उसके अलावा आपने हाई डोज एस्पिरिन देना है इन पेशेंट्स विद कावासाकी डिजीज। इनिशियली हाई डोज में देना है फॉर द एंटी इंफ्लेमेटरी इफेक्ट, एंड देन लेटर ऑन अगर कॉर्नरीज आपकी जो है वो एट रिस्क हैं, आपने एको करवाया है और एको में जो है वो एबनॉर्मेलिटीज आ रही हैं, देन आपने कंटिन्यू रखना है एस्पिरिन फॉर इट्स एंटी प्लेटलेट इफेक्ट जब तक आप उसको जो है वो पेशेंट को फॉलो कर रहे हैं और चीज़ें नॉर्मल नहीं होती हैं। तो इवन यू हैव टू कंटिन्यू फॉर लाइफ लॉन्ग, द एस्पिरिन शुड बी कंटिन्यू फॉर लाइफ लॉन्ग इन पेशेंट्स हु आर हैविंग कॉर्नरी आर्टरी एबनॉर्मेलिटीज, and the treatment results in resolution in about 85 to 90% of the patients. So treatment जितना जल्दी आप start करते हैं, it is the sole most important factor जो कि बताता है complication होंगी या नहीं। तो treatment is very important, and this we have discussed that the aspirin should be reduced to antiplatelet after 48 hours, after the patient is fever free for 48 hours, or in those with coronary artery abnormalities you continue with the aspirin therapy. देन थ्रोम्बोसिस, अगर पेशेंट कोरोनरी थ्रोम्बोसिस के साथ प्रेजेंट कर रहा है तो इन दैट केस फिब्रोनोलाइटिक थेरेपी इज रिक्वायर्ड विद द टिश्यू प्लाज्मिनोजेन एक्टिवेटर और अदर थ्रोम्बोलाइटिक एजेंट्स के अंदर, और उन पेशेंट्स के अंदर आपने एस्पिरिन या क्लोपिडोग्रिल दोनों कंटिन्यू करनी होती हैं, एंड सुपरविजन ऑफ अ पीडियाट्रिक कार्डियोलॉजिस्ट इज रिक्वायर्ड इन दोज पेशेंट्स। The prognosis is good, 85 to 90% recovery है आपकी with treatment, and without treatment 25% patients के अंदर risk है coronaries की abnormalities का, but with treatment is this the risk is reduced to less than 5%. ठीक है ना, तो treatment is the very important thing, and the patients who have the coronary artery abnormalities, the prognosis depends upon the severity of the illness. So in these patients, you order the echocardiography and lipid profile annually to see the progression of atherosclerosis, and the prophylaxis, that is a heart healthy diet, adequate exercise, tobacco avoidance, lipid monitoring is all that is required in patients with Kawasaki disease. So this is the end of our today's topics, both Kawasaki and rheumatic fever. Now if you have any question, you are most welcome. You can write your question on the chat. if there are no questions from your side, then I can say wait for 1 to 2 minutes if you have any questions. Okay, that's for all today. Thank you so much.